Hi everyone, Adam here. Welcome to designing a demonstration plan. We're going to walk you through the steps that you need to know to be able to put together the written plan for the first presentation that you'll do in this class, which is the training demonstration. So you can think of a training demo as a time and a place where you would teach a group of people how to do something. It's very hands-on, it involves props, and when they're done, everybody gets to try to do the thing, whatever the thing is, and you will be amazing. So we're going to talk about a couple things today. We're going to talk about outlining the steps to planning a successful demo using the presentation plan. I'm going to flip back and forth between this PowerPoint and the actual written plan that you'll turn in to sort of show you what goes where so that hopefully you'll do a good job. We're going to talk about the 5 steps to the training protocol. You can think of the training protocol as a 5-step best practices for how to present a training style workshop. And then we're going to talk about, what are the pitfalls that people, commonly run into in this class and in life, and then also how to avoid them and give a really stellar training demonstration. Great, you ready? Okay, let's do this thing. So what is the purpose of a training demo? Like, why do we do this? That's a good question. Here's some answers. You would use this type of training or this type of presentation anytime you need to demonstrate a procedure or a skill, that could be used in a career or occupation. And so, a example that's really easy for people to get their mind around is how to give a shot, like a vaccination. So like a subcutaneous or intravenous shot. This is one that people do frequently, and it's always a good one. So, imagine that you are a vet and you need to teach your little vet techs how to do this kind of thing if they don't know how to do it. This type of workshop would be appropriate for that situation. So in this type of workshop, you would model the procedures necessary to perform a specified skill or task. This is important because sometimes people think that they're going to come in and they're going to tell people how to do stuff and then they're going to sit down. No, in this type of presentation, you will actually show us how to do the thing, with your hands in front of everybody, and then everybody gets a chance to practice. You're also going to illustrate and explain, especially with examples, and you're going to try to also prove, the value or efficiency of a product. And what I mean by this is that typically whenever you're teaching somebody how to do something a certain way, it's because that way to you is best or most efficient or, the safest way to do it. And so, whenever you appeal to them to teach them how to do this, you need to stress, that this is the safest way or the most efficient way so that they sort of understand like why they're doing it and also have an interest in wanting to learn how to do it. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So this is the part where I would ask you, can you give an example of when you would conduct a training? And I'm not going to ask you that because this is the internet and I can't hear you. This presentation would ordinarily be given in lab. So let's talk about the steps to planning your demo. This is probably the thing that I enjoy most about this class. I will tell you the first time that I went through teaching this, I learned a lot, and I really wish that my public speaking class were like this class. And that's not patronizing or because I get paid to be here. That's a real thing. And the reason is because we give you a very sort of scientific-y sort of approach to how to go about conveying a message. And that was way better than what happened to me, which was they said write a speech, and then they put me in front of the crowd and I gave the speech, and then they counted the number of times that I said and then deducted points based on that. Terrible way to go. That's how you generate a fear of speaking. Anyhow, so let's talk about these steps. Step 1, everything flows from the objective, okay? And this is pretty simple, right? Like, because first you want to ask yourself, what do I want to achieve here? Like, that's job 1. You need to know what you want to do. Or rather, what you need to say is, I want to know what I want my audience to know how to do, or what I want my audience to learn, or what I want my audience to feel. And then you need to articulate that. You need to write it down. And maybe you have 2 or 3 objectives. Maybe you only have 1. But you need to think about like what your objective is, because if you can clarify that at the beginning, the rest of your speech will make so much more sense. Sometimes when people don't know what they're trying to do, the speech comes off that way. It's really like muddled and confusing, and we're left with, like, what was I supposed to learn here? And that's no good. So I want to show you over here. This is the form that you will fill out whenever you turn in, your plan. This is the written plan for your training demonstration. And so lo and behold, right here we have objective, and it says at the conclusion of this demonstration, the audience will be able to blank, and so in the example of my shot, we'll say, the audience will be able to deliver a subcutaneous vaccination to, a pig or cow, whatever the case is. And maybe a secondary objective is, they will also be able to deliver an intravenous vaccination to a pig or cow. And so notice that this is an audience-centered thing. We write it in terms of what we want the audience to do. What a lot of people do wrong here, hint, hint, is that they write about what they're going to do. So they say, I'm going to teach the audience about shots. No, that's terrible, because whenever you, like if you get up and you teach the audience about shots and then you go sit down and you're like, hey, mission accomplished. But if your audience doesn't know how to give shots, did you really achieve your objective? No, the answer is no. So we always want to write your objectives in terms of what the audience will be able to do or feel or know. Great, super. Let's go back over here. So the next thing you want to do is design a way to create interest. And why do we do this? It's because people are more apt to learn and retain information if they're interested in the thing that they're going to learn about. This seems, self-evident, but you would be surprised how people just sort of launch into, what they're going to talk about without first trying to get the audience to sort of buy into the idea of learning about it. I think this is one of the things that separates like really good lecturers and presenters from people that are just there to give you the information, okay? And so that part goes here under prepare, in that we're preparing the audience to receive the information. And so maybe you talk about the importance, vaccinations are important, or, being able to give it in the right place prevents, harm to the animal, whatever it is, and you may have, a completely different one in your topic, but you need to think about what will be of benefit to the audience, like why will it be beneficial or interesting to them? We also call it the interest approach. So think about that. This I feel like is one of the things that people have to think on the most. Like they need to, it may be self-evident to you why some obscure forestry policy is great, but like it may not be to me or to the rest of the class. And so you need to really think about, why is this interesting to them? And so if you need help with this, I'll be glad to talk to you about it. I feel like it is one of the tougher things. While we're here, I want to talk about visuals, supplies, equipment, and references. These are things in part so that you have to make a list so you don't forget stuff on the day that you present. So visuals would be things like, if you have an electronic PowerPoint, if you have, props, if you have, flashcards or handouts or whatever it is, this is where they would go. Supplies and equipment, kind of similar, like you might need a laptop, you might need, back to our shot example, you might need needles and syringes, like that's a place that could go. And then references, okay? References need to be done throughout the entire class in APA format. This is a thing that people struggle with, but it's really not that hard. You just look it up on the internet. By the way, my favorite reference that somebody once wrote down was they literally wrote the internet, just like that. And I was like, no, zero. Anyway, so you want to write an APA format, and you can think of references sometimes. The things that you're presenting on you think are, really common knowledge, or maybe you got the information in class. And so you can think of references as, a way to give people the ability to look up if they want to read more about your topic. Think of it that way. So even if you learned it in class, even if it's common knowledge, see if you can't find it someplace that other people can get back to. Okay, let's go back to our list. So the next step, two steps really, these kind of go together. Identify the important steps and then the key information about the steps, okay? And so those go right here. So think about, what are the main steps in teaching somebody, back to my example of giving a shot, how to give a shot. So maybe step one is like sterilize the animal. And step two is, assemble your, syringes and, medicines and all that. And then step three is, attach the needle to the syringe, So you can see that what we're really doing here is we're breaking out the main steps. And then over here on the right, under procedures, you got your list over here. And then under procedures, you talk about how to perform each step, in detail. because the more detail, the better. This is also a place where you could give interesting facts, and it's also a place where you could talk about any safety concerns, for this particular step. And so it's pretty straightforward. You just sort of work through the steps and then talk about what you're doing. I will tell you that Robert and I will be grading these things, and that the more detail you can give us, the more apt we are to be able to say that you have a good presentation planned here, or that you have a bad one. What happens when you don't give us a lot of information is we don't know, and we have to say, well, we just aren't really sure how this is going to turn out because you didn't give us enough information. And so if you're ever in doubt about what to write, always write more than you think that you would need. So let's go back over here. So step number 5, determine the best way to explain the model. Okay, and what I mean by this is think about how you're going to explain and model, not the model. Think about how you're going to show people or how you're going to demonstrate how to do the thing, whatever the thing is. And so I'll give you the example of one that went, kind of badly a couple years ago. This kid was demonstrating how to tie like sailor's knots. And the way that he demonstrated was he stood in front of us and he tied the knots and we watched him. And that was really bad because 1, it's backwards from the way that I would do it if I were tying the knot. And 2, his hands like obscured what was happening with the knot tying most of the time. And so we were very baffled by this. And and it wasn't bad, but it also wasn't ideal. And so, whatever your topic is and you're thinking about how to demonstrate it, think of the best way to do that. So for example, with his, a better way to do it might be to have it on the PowerPoint behind him with the little illustrated ropes with arrows showing which way the ends of the rope go, and then he could also do it in front of us. With giving the shot, it may be that it's easy to see in a small room. If we were in a bigger room, maybe we would want to put it under like a dock cam, so that everybody can see it blown up on the screen. So just think about that. Like think about, how are people going to watch me do this, and will they be able to get it? So great. And then the next step is review the presentation and then practice the demonstration. And here's what I mean by that. Let's go back over here. So first, let's talk about this, practice the skill. You need to give everybody in the room the ability to try to do the thing that you just taught us how to do. This is a very hands-on speech. And so you think about it this way. If you're training a group of people, if you're training your vet techs how to give shots, and you show them how to do it once and you say, great, everybody's got it. And then we go home and then they go off in the world not really knowing how to do this, or at least you don't know that they know how to do it. That's a bad situation. And so, the way that we check comprehension, the way that we check, competency is we give them the ability to practice and then we watch them. And so whatever your topic is, you need to pick a topic that people are able to do the thing at their desk. And we want for everybody to be able to do it ideally. For example, we had a girl last semester who had us look at microscopes and she could only get 4 microscopes. And so, some people had to share. That was totally okay. If you have a question or a concern, talk to your lab instructor. We can get that worked out. But in general, we want as many people to be able to participate as possible. And then you can check comprehension as you go. Like you have to watch them and say, oh, you could do this a little better. Like, oh, you didn't quite get it. It's a very back and forth. There's a dialogue. I don't want you to think that you just have to stand and talk and then everybody else has to be quiet and listen. That's not the way this works. Okay. And then lastly, you want to review. And so now for you writing this plan, this may seem ridiculous because why would you want to review the main points when they're just like right here, like just inches away? But what we want you to do is that at the end of your speech, it's best to recap, because when you recap, that redundancy helps people remember what they learned that day. And so you talk about, all right, remember our 5 most important steps were, and then you list them, and then you also talk about why it was important, like why was this safest or most efficient, so that you leave them with that thought. Okay, great. Now, what I have here next on the PowerPoint is what we actually just went over. We assemble the materials, you prepare the audience with an interest approach, and you can refer back to this if you need to. And then you teach the skill, and then we go on to the next page. Demonstrate the skill, show them how to do it. Over here you talk about any safety concerns, special techniques, alternative methods, and interesting facts. Interesting facts are great because sometimes when you're showing us how to do stuff and you're assembling things with your hands, there's quiet time, and a lot of times like that bothers people that there's quiet time. And so if you have interesting facts to sort of pepper in, while you're doing it, that makes for a better talk. Provide learners with the opportunity to practice, the do portion. That's what we just talked about. And then have the learners perform the skill, guide them if necessary. Have all the learners get to do all the steps. And then you can also question the learners. So you can, ask them if they're, where you are. Like, are you guys up to this step? What are you having trouble with? Again, it's supposed to be very much a dialogue and really kind of a very natural approachable and friendly sort of talk. It's not supposed to be like I stand at the podium and deliver this like very cold sort of way. Great. All right. And then at the end, you just want to check that they learned what you want them to learn. So you can supervise their practice, make sure that they learned it, check their learners for progress, and then provide any feedback. Great. Let's talk about pitfalls to avoid. Not practicing prior to the presentation. You would think that this wouldn't be like a problem, but it is. And so you want to you want to practice. All the better if you can rope your roommates into watching you practice, because then you get to do it before like a live audience. Also, practice with your props. Because a lot of times people will run through, their note cards and what they're going to say because that's what they're concerned about, and then it shows that they've not practiced with their props because, they're like awkward or they can't do the thing, or they drop things or they don't know where to place things on the table so that people can see. So practice with your props. Next thing, learners who can't see, again, are they really learning if they can't see? So think about where your audience is going to be and what they're going to be able to see, and keep that in mind whenever you're demonstrating and arranging things around the table. Forgetting a key step. One thing that I would suggest for this is to make yourself note cards, and you can even get fancy and like, punch a hole in them and tie them together so that they're in like a little booklet. I prefer note cards over printing paper. Because note cards aren't as obtrusive, or distracting. Like if you're in front of a group and you forget a step and you whip out your like 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, it's very obvious that you lost track of where you're going, and the paper makes noise and it's really embarrassing. But if you got your note cards, you can keep them in order. They're small. You can kind of obscure them behind your hand. So they're not like, there's a reason people use note cards, and that's why. That's what I'm saying. Failure to check comprehension is the biggest pet peeve that I have. Like where people like they do the thing, they allow people to do the thing, and then they say, "Great, thanks for coming to my workshop," and they sit down. And they don't, sort of make sure that everybody learned the thing that we want them to learn. And then they also don't, review to sort of reiterate it. They just end. And I think a lot of times, people, they just, they're so relieved that they got out all of the information, and they think that mission accomplished. But remember, the real mission is to achieve your objective of making sure that your audience can do whatever the thing is that you want them to do. And, the last part of that is making sure that they got it. So always remember to check to make sure that they're comprehending. And that can be asking questions or just observing that they, did it right, whatever the case is. Another, like if you have to do your presentation backwards for people to be able to see the thing that you're doing, you're doing it wrong. Like there's got to be a better way to do it than with you standing with your back to the crowd. So to think about, what audiovisual equipment you can drag into it, and there's got to be a better way. So that's all for me. Again, just to review, we talked about the steps in planning a successful demonstration. We talked about the 5 steps for using the training protocol, and we talked about pitfalls. Now, I want to show you one thing. This is the resources folder in Scholar for the course. Those templates that you're going to fill out are under presentation templates. It's called training demo template. It's real. It doesn't require a whole lot. And then also grading rubrics. If you ever want to take a look how you're going to get graded. And actually, let me show you that. Let's see here. Well, where are you at, Word? Boom. Okay. So this is this is what you'll get back once you turn in your plan. This is what Robert will write on. And so, this is all very straightforward. Is the demonstration title action oriented? By the way, your title needs to be action oriented. Like it needs to have a verb and an adjective and convey some sense of what we're going to be doing or learning. You can't just call it like shot. It makes you sound like Little John. Anyway, and then the objective, are they audience centered? Are they written in terms of what the audience is going to learn, or did you write it like what you're going to do? Because that's wrong. Did you express, desired performance, like what you want them to gain from this? Did you provide clear direction for the presentation? And then on and on. It's all the things that we talked about. There's no surprises here. Did you identify an interest approach? Did you talk about like what's going to be a benefit to them, why they would want to learn the thing? Are your steps clear? Did you give information that includes safety concerns, basic principles, why the step is important, or any techniques that they need to know? Did we give them a chance to apply, like a do portion? Did we give them, a chance to practice the skill? And then at the end, did we summarize, and bring closure to the demonstration? Like, do we, or is there a plan for that? And I will tell you that whenever you submit your plan, the more you write, and the more detailed you are, the better we will be able to give you feedback on. Like if you write and you give us just a couple words, we don't know if it's going to be like great and you've got it all figured out, or if it's really going to be terrible. And our job is to prevent you from doing a terrible job, because like we don't want you to do a terrible job in front of your peers. So write as much as like more than you think we would ever need, and then we can really get a sense of like where you're at with this presentation. So thank you very much for listening. You've been a great audience, and I look forward to seeing you in class.